You're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio, Bridgeport. It's September 21st, 2017. And you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Remember this is what we said, to never be heard, seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said, to never be heard, seen from again.
It's all right, Serge. I chalked that one up to me. I'll be the bigger man this time and take 51% of the blame and only give you 49% of your well-deserved share. Hello and welcome everyone to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you as always from Studio B here at the Co-Prosperity Sphere in beautiful Bridgeport, Chicago, the community of the future, as some like to say. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to Lumpen Radio 105.5 FM or using the app to tune in or listen in. If you aren't aware of the app, you can go to TuneIn Radio or the Lumpen Radio app and listen whenever to all the shows, not just the beer shows. There are more than one show, so I have to use the plural, beer shows. I also want to thank everyone out there who is listening via podcast, however you do that, most likely iTunes, but it could be other places. Thank you, guys. Remember to keep those ratings and reviews going. We always appreciate those. Thank you to everyone who's actually taken the time out of their day to write a review or leave stars, which is pretty awesome if you think about it. I'm going to spend time not just enjoying this show, but actually going on to signing in to Apple or wherever and leaving a review, most likely a terrible one, but it doesn't matter. It's the time that I'm thanking them for. For those of you who have no idea what's going on, it's your first time listening, let me just give you a brief introduction about what the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable is all about. The goal of the show is to open up a window into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer, getting into your glass, feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beer with people whose opinions I respect and admire, and it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And before I get to my guests, I will quickly mention that all my guests' opinions are their own and are not affiliated with any other entity, primarily not Lumpen Radio or the Beer Temple, probably not any other entity either, but I don't care as much whether they represent those entities as much. But let's get right to it with my guests. I think it's a clear-cut order this time, I believe. I think you are first, Mr. Masney. We always introduce people in order of seniority, that being how often they've been on the show. Tiebreaker goes to anyone who has ever substitute hosted the show. So I think we might have a tie or close to a tie, so you're up first. How are you, Steve Masney?
I am doing very well, Chris. Thank you for inviting me. It's always fun to have a good excuse to drive into the city on a Thursday night and enjoy some Kimski, enjoy some beer, come over here, enjoy some more beer, see where the night takes you. I think the last time
it took you to the floor. I think
the night did take me to the floor the last time. I'll try to keep it together a little bit better this time, but we'll see. The night is young.
It was memorable. I think if you weren't as open and carefree about it, I probably would have played it a little bit tighter to the vest. But it was pretty funny. You, I think, at one point, or maybe you ended the night on the floor of Studio A with moving blankets. There's like furniture blankets.
Surprisingly comfortable.
Well, in the state you were in, I think you could have been like bed of nails. Surprisingly comfortable.
I'll take the bed of roses. The thorns are there, but at least there's the good symbolism.
Yes. Okay. But anyway, thanks for coming on. Anything new with you?
So Beer Download, just we concluded our radio tournament. So, we did this whole
Yeah, man,
5-year.
the end. I forget how fast the end comes.
Right.
I don't. So how did it? What was the? Can you give me a quick, or everyone a quick rundown of what your tournament is, and then how maybe the last 2 or 3 rounds went?
I can try. We did a 5-year tournament, 256 beers. It was this epic scope, 2010 to almost 2015. And Goose Island Sophie, which was an independent beer at the beginning and was an Anheuser-Busch InBev product at the end, won. There was some controversy. Then we took a pause, kind of, gathered ourselves, and then when we joined Lumpen, started a new tournament, decided to scope it back a little bit, 32 beers. And Anchor Steam just kept on winning and winning and winning.
I remember hearing that,
we had your wife on one of the first episodes, perhaps
Margaret,
the first
yeah.
episode, and it was Apex Predator versus Anchor Steam, and Apex Predator didn't bring its A game. Anchor Steam did, and it won. And
Margaret voted for Apex.
I'm sure she was correct. Usually Matt and I are wrong when we guess both the other way. But it went all the way to the finals. And on the other side, there was Lumpen Boogie, which then we had to put in Jungle Boogie because Lumpen Boogie was a special holiday thing and blah, blah, blah. And, man, I like that Lumpen Boogie, Jungle Boogie. It's a phenomenal beer. And so those two are in the championship. And if you want to know who won, I guess you should go to beerdownload.com and listen. Or if you were listening live on Saturday at 4 p.m., you would already know.
Can you tell me who the final 4 was?
So Mars defeated the Lindemans Cuvée Rene Creek.
Okay. Excellent beer.
And Anchor took down... I ought to know this. Oh, I think that it was the Half Acre Valley Joe. Vallejo Valley Joe is what Jamie, Station Master Jamie, is calling it.
I like that.
I believe that's what it was, but my memory is not what it once was. The brain cells are slowly decreasing.
Being pickled by alcohol. Yeah. Okay, I know the feeling. Well, thank you for coming on and for giving us a quick rundown. And for people who are interested in the other... I think there's only 2 that I know of. The other beer show, I was going to say. I think there's only 2 on Lumpen. It's Beer Download, and you can go to beerdownload.com or go to lumpenradio.com, I think it is. I should probably know that, and listen in. So, thanks. My next guest is the beer aficionado. Mm-hmm. Tonight, you're the beer aficionado. Correct. You told me that. You were very, very clear. Also known as Doug the Licky. How are you, man?
Doing great.
Love the shirt. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I was looking at it earlier. Is it a professional wrestler?
A professional wrestler. It's the professional wrestler. This is a Ric Flair T-shirt. So Ric Flair was recently hospitalized, and he was in bad shape for a while. So I saw a tweet from a sportscaster that I like that encouraged folks to check out his web shop and order a shirt. And so I browsed and saw this one and loved it, and brought me back to my high school days, and pulled the trigger on it.
That's awesome. And I told you somebody was at the tap room, at the Beer Temple tap room, wearing a different Ric Flair shirt just a few days ago. And he told me, I thought maybe that he had passed, but I guess he's just in bad shape.
It looked bad for a while, but apparently he's on the mend.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm. Good. And the shirt is very much in the theme of those wolves howling at the moon, or the Three Piano Cat type.
It's almost
thing.
like a Thriller, like Michael Jackson's Thriller shirt, but with Ric Flair's face.
And he's wooing at the moon, is how you put it, Doug. Yes. And I think that's perfectly accurate there. So, anything new with you other than just shirts that you've been picking up?
All kinds of stuff, but I had my 1-year anniversary with Revolution, and one thing. Thanks. When I realized that and saw who was on the show tonight, it reminded me that when I was in between jobs, I took about 2 weeks off before starting at Rev, and one day I wanted to use those 2 weeks to spend a little more time with my son and hit a couple breweries, a couple new breweries I hadn't been to, or places I wanted to go back to, and on a random day, I think it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, right around lunchtime, I went over to Dovetail and went there for the first time. So it was probably just like a few months after it opened, and was by myself. So I was had my face buried in my phone, was drinking a beer there. Then all of a sudden, someone sat down next to me, and I didn't even look up. And then I heard him talking to the bartender, and I heard the voice, and I said, "I know that voice." And I said, "That's Steve Mastny." And I had never met Steve before, and then I like turned my head slowly, and I was like, "Yep, that's Steve Mastny." And then we ended up talking, and ended up taking a tour of Dovetail together that night, and it was really fun. So it's good to see
awesome.
Steve again.
That was an excellent time.
Cool. That's awesome. It's funny, Dovetail also being a year old. I was describing them. I caught myself. I was writing an email to somebody telling them about this brand new brewery, Dovetail, and then I was like, I don't think they're brand new anymore, but it's crazy how time flies. So congratulations, Doug.
It's not brand new, but it's out.
Yes. And my last guest, certainly not the least, is Mr. Tom.
And least.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, least appearances.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I guess it equals least.
Yeah,
in that one.
absolutely. I'll take it.
Yeah, good. Mr. Tom Corder of Penrose Brewing. How are you, dude?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Had a nice day of traveling around. I actually saw Doug earlier today at Revolution. I saw Chris at Beer
Did
Temple.
a shot of whiskey with Doug earlier today?
I don't know what happened there, but there was
From what I
somebody's
heard.
birthday, and it just happened to be there.
Just happened to happen.
Yeah, it just happened to happen. Ran into some old friends, some old brewing colleagues there. So nice day. Nice day in Chicago and getting things done.
Cool.
You know, you say that you've been on the least number of times, and to me, so I listen to a lot of this show, but I don't hear them all. But I think that every time that you're on, I must specifically make sure that I listen, because I feel like you've been on quite a bit.
3 times, something like that. It's weird, actually, because this is the first time I'm not on with Andy Crouch. So it last like 3 times, Andy's always been on white T-shirt, deep V, and on the Skype train, and I'm missing him today.
I'm almost always here with either Ray Daniels or one of the Master Crusher-owns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. If I had just done it a little bit different, I believe next week Andy is going to be on in person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big day.
Yeah. And he better bring his A game in
Serious
terms of
V-neck.
Yeah.
in terms of attire, because last time he had an undershirt, but he classed it up a little bit with a bow tie.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to be hard to beat. But he better. That's all I'm saying. So
What if he shaved like a V-neck style shirt into his chest hair and then like a bow tie kind of thing with his beard, something like that?
I think you're giving him, well, he doesn't have a beard.
You could grow one.
Grow a beard, Andy, if you're listening. Quickly. Yeah, I think you're giving him some ideas, maybe.
It's a
maybe
little terrifying.
Ideas.
It's a
Knowing
little
what not to
scary.
do is still a worthy thing.
It's
You have
fair.
to know
It's
what
fair.
not to do.
You got to draw the line somewhere, and Steve has
It's
firmly
still help.
defined that.
You're helping. So, guys, you know the drill. We start this stuff out by talking about some of the beers that we've been enjoying lately or we're excited to try. Steve, you want to go first?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and stop, making people need to listen to the Beer Download to find out what actually happened in the tournament, and just say that Jungle Boogie, Lumpin' Boogie, I've just been loving. I think they put it in cans for the first time. I believe it was June 24th because I was here. We happened to do Beer Download. I walked over to Maria's and they had brought the cans there within the last hour. And I went to Chris's place and bought a case, and I bought some at Maria's, and then I bought another case and another case. And then Edmar gave me a case when I went to the CBS picnic. I picked up some beer for the picnic, and he's like, "This is just for you, Steve." And yeah, I'm just a giant Mars Jungle Boogie fanboy. It's ridiculous at this point.
You are.
I like that beer a lot. It's good in the morning. It's good in the nighttime. It's good if you're staying up all night and trying to do things. It's good all the time.
All right. I certainly couldn't disagree. I think it's definitely one of my favorite beers as well. So I'm not surprised. I would have been a little upset if Anchor Steam had won, mainly because I think every episode I listened to I was internally voting against Anchor. It's a fine beer, but it's never done it for me personally.
I always used to feel that way as well, and they've had a lot of fresh Anchor Steam in the market lately, at least out at the different beer stores in the suburbs, and it's pretty good. It's just a straight up pretty good beer. Rada the Contrarian.
Chris is a East Coast guy, so you gotta kind of weight that against Anchor Steam for that. If you put like a Dogfish in front of him,
or a Sierra Nevada.
That's a West Coast thing.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
That's my point.
Okay.
Come on. Come on. Give me some credit here. I know.
No credit for you,
I know.
Chris.
I know. I know. No boundaries. I've been talking about how much I loved sculpin back in the day and all that stuff. So West Coast, I've got love for the West Coast. You know, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any of that nonsense.
Arata voted for Anchor Steam.
He did.
Yeah.
So it came down to the guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adam and Jen Murphy, longtime victorious CBS picnic folks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were firmly on the side of Arata being wrong, which, it's usually a good position to take.
Right. Okay. Well, cool. How about you, Doug?
So I had you introduce me by my Instagram handle and not my Twitter handle, because that's where I post my beer geeky stuff, because I've been trying to get back into dipping into my cellar, and have went to New York for a wedding 2 weekends ago, and went to Other Half, popular spot for the big IPAs, New England IPAs and all that stuff. Had a really fun time there, and had 3 different friends, and this hadn't happened in over a year, but in the last 3 weeks I had 3 different friends go to Russian River, and I'll say, hey, you're a big Russian River fan, Doug. That was one of the places that got me into craft beer. Say, can I get you anything? And most people would have said yes to one of them and no to the other 2, but I said yes to all 3 of them.
Yes.
Whatever you
Why,
can get
yes,
me.
you can. Whatever.
You have good friends, Doug.
The one I'm excited about that I hadn't tried until I just opened it is they just put out their T30, which is their celebration of Toronado, the craft beer bar in San Francisco and now San Diego and Seattle. Russian River,
there's a Tornado in Seattle now as well.
Yeah,
Did
it's
not
probably
know
like
that.
2 years old. It's definitely the newest, but it's been around a little while.
It's the dovetail of Tornadoes, brand new, 2 years old. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Yeah.
They did a great sour, I guess, 10 years ago that they called T20, and then they did another similar version called T25. For this 30th anniversary one, it was I actually didn't even know what style it was until I got here tonight and realized it's just a Belgian pale ale, a lot simpler than what they've done in the past, but it's really nice. It was a lot easier to come by instead of being a 1 hour sellout. It's been around, and that's why some friends of mine were able to just casually go in and grab me a bottle. But,
that's cool.
Really like it. So
yeah, it's a very nice beer. Thank you for bringing it, and thanks to your friends.
No
How many
problem.
bottles of this did you get?
Just one of this, and then I have another one. I think you pronounce it Beatification, which is the more lemony sour that they make once every year and a half, which is a little different. They have their Supplication, Consecration, and Temptation, which are their core sours that they try to keep in stock for the majority of the year, and then this Beatification comes out once every year and a half. So I was able to, each friend got me one of those, so I brought one of those tonight too.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to drinking the beatification, whatever it is. And last and least, well, no, I still have to go, so I'm least.
Okay.
So you're
that
not
works.
last,
All right,
but
appreciate it.
You're certainly
I'm least.
over the
You're
hump.
last. Yeah. So that works.
Okay. How about you?
I'm Tom, by the way.
Yeah, how about you,
It's all right. We did a Oktoberfest panel at the brewery the other day. So we picked up, I think it was 6 Oktoberfests from on the shelf in the store and tasted them blind and see what we liked about them. And Afterburner, Metropolitan, for me, took the cake. Perfect. I didn't have Revolution in that panel, just to give you a warning. I'm sure that would have been great. But
his fingers are blatantly crossed. I can see them right there.
And it was absolutely wonderful, and reminds me why I love that beer and why I love that brewery. And it was delicious.
What about it? Did you like?
I think the malt character was right on.
But to you, what does that mean? Yeah.
Some of them were. I had one that was like ultra raisiny, and I was like, it doesn't quite fit. It's more in that kind of like Special B Belgian-ish style. Some didn't quite have the profile of that rich, kind of chewy mouthfeel of what I like a nice.
So you like the Märzen style, the bigger, heartier ones.
I want it bigger and heartier. I had one guy on panel who wanted a crusher. He wanted the 2-liter boot of it and judged it based on how many 2-liter boots he could have.
Which, to be fair, is nowadays when you go to Munich, that is the style. In fact, they've even started to demarcate their Oktoberfest beers between the Fest beers and the Märzen style beers.
So we put one Fest beer in the panel, and it was a Eurofest beer, and it was, I mean, blatantly different. And one guy loved it, and I was like, it's just not what I'm expecting.
Was it Polliners or Weisstefans?
It was Weisstefan.
Yeah.
And it was a good beer. It was fine. It just wasn't what I was expecting for that panel with everybody else. We had Pollyanna on there. We had Adam Smasher from Two Brothers, Great Lakes, their one.
How did that one? Well, if you don't want to say.
No, it was fine. Everything was fine.
That one's
Nothing
been up
was,
and down in the past couple
Nothing
of years.
was bad. Like it's super fairly fresh in the grand scheme of things right now. Nothing's really more than a month old, so you're okay. Nothing's overly oxidized. Schlafly was the other one. I wanted to put a Schlafly one in there because I really like what they do and respect their kind of in-profile beers. And so I was like, let's put one of theirs in there. I just the Metro one, just hands down, the malt profile was right on, the yeast was clean, and it was there.
That's awesome.
So one I didn't hear there. Did you happen to do the off color?
No, I didn't. It wasn't on the. I pulled them directly from the Mix of Six shelf, which is probably my least favorite shelf in all stores. But I knew because of Oktoberfests were fairly new, I could count on that. But I did have the off color at the Windy City Expo, and it was delicious and a lovely malt character.
So I got a 6-pack that I thought had a very unusual character. And I kind of put my finger on it for me anyway, and I asked everyone else, and no one could quite decide. But when I planted them with what I thought it was, I thought it really tasted like peanut butter, which I found very unusual. And I don't know if it was just the 6-pack I got or what, but it had this like distinct like nuttiness, but towards like peanut butter, and it was quite unusual. I personally don't like peanut butter. The beer was good objectively, although I gave all mine away because I just wasn't into that particular flavor.
It's funny that you were talking about the Weisstefan Fest beer because we put that on early. It was the first Oktoberfest beer that we put on at the tap room. We put on a 50 liter, so almost a half barrel of it, and I was a little nervous, and it crushed it. People loved it. It was so good, so bready. People were just devouring it, not as a fest beer, but just as like a really nice bready, bootable beer. It was great.
We had it in bottles, obviously, so that's going to skew it. And,
Sure.
And it had a
And
strong
relative.
Euro character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and relative against the other ones, you're tasting 5 other American Märzens or Oktoberfests, and
You didn't go with Polliner or Eyinger, eh?
I just did a quick hit, 6 beers,
Right.
and just did it. And I wanted to include one that was non-American craft beer just to see what's our difference. And
Right.
we pulled the Fest beer. It was kind of dumb luck. It was totally out of profile for the other ones.
Sure.
And different, but it was fine. It was good.
Yeah. But not
Crush a
that
boot.
Märzen style that you were.
That American craft beer Märzen, I think, is more malty than German.
Yeah.
And like less Euro. A lot of Euro beers, I get this over Euro hop, almost on the realm of skunk. Like it's kind of on that train to there, and that's
like a Beck's.
Yeah, almost to Beck's. Beck's is like an extreme version for me, and I call that Euro tasting in especially lighter beers, and then Oktoberfest.
So it's again that like honeyed flavor to it, sometimes a little oxidized. To me, there's always a whole bunch of good ones. We have Oktoberfest on as well from Firestone, which is exceptional, but Eyinger is still, I think, year in and year out is always in my top 3, so it's overall my number 1. Just a great beer from those guys.
We had the Spaten just last weekend, right from the wooden keg.
The Spaten / Goose Island.
Yes.
And have you guys heard about this beer at all? Yeah, you have. So they went to Mike Siegel from Goose Island, went to Spaten and tried to brew as historically accurate a Märzen as they could, and aged it in fermented it, I believe, just lagered.
I think it was lagered. Yeah,
in a pitch-lined barrel, like a big barrel.
It was 400 liters, I want to say, so like 100 gallons, which is like No, that can't be. I think
No,
it
it
was.
wasn't
I think
that
it was
big.
200 liters. So it was like 50 ounce. Yeah, it was a little more than a barrel. It was like
A wine barrel is bourbon barrels are like 55. Wine barrels are 59 to 60 something, depending on the.
So this
the
is maybe
type of wine.
100.
it was bigger than that. It was. Yeah, it might have been 400
It
liters.
might have been 400. It was
was
huge.
It took up a decent sized chunk of the back of a standard
Transit
cargo
van. Yeah.
It was like they had it on a pallet and they couldn't take it down because it weighed several hundred pounds.
From where you are to about here. And then that was the thin wise. It went up to the ceiling.
Yeah, so probably like 5 to 7 beer barrels.
It's always
I
great
would
to
think.
Yeah.
explain things relative to visuals that we can only see on the
Right.
on radio. Yeah. Anyway, well, for me, I'd say the beer that I had that was, I think the Weichstefan Fest was something that just came to mind after you trashed it. So needlessly, really heartlessly, but also White Rooster from Sparta, Illinois, which is, believe it, even further south than Scratch, my beloved Scratch in Ava, Illinois. Two folks at the shop, Brittany and Nick, have been ranting and raving about White Rooster. So I brought a couple bottles. I've only tasted just a tiny bit of it, but I haven't had any. So I'm excited to try some of this White Rooster stuff. So we'll see. The guys dropped it off, and they were pretty flustered about having to drive into the city. Like, legitimately flustered, did not like being there, were not comfortable. Were kind of lamenting the fact that they had to drive back on the highways and all the traffic. I mean, they came in the middle of the day when it was like as good as it could possibly get to. So we were telling them, like, all right, you got to be out of here by 3:30 at the latest. Get out of here. They're like, okay, we will.
That's too late. 1:30 or else you're done.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Styles, I think I saw this on your Instagram. They're like wild barrel fermented
Yeah.
chart or Brett.
I mean, I brought a couple bottles,
Okay.
so we'll find out. They do a lot of fruited stuff, wild mixed fermentation, stuff like that. So we'll see.
So, Chris, we went around and asked how everyone's doing, what's new. We didn't get that from you. It's been about a month you've been open. How's it going?
It's going well. We are certainly trying to figure out what the heck we're doing, learning just the operational side of an on-premise thing. People seem to enjoy themselves while they're here. It's very much still a work in progress. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of like a perfectionist, so when it's not where I want it to be, I kind of am apologizing for it all the time. But I dig it. I'm happy with it. Things are calming down. I'm getting a little bit more sleep now, which tends to make me a little bit more happy. But it's good. We're certainly not in a rhythm yet. We haven't even really started our programming, where other than like releases or events that people come to us, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to kind of present this bar to be? Right now, it's just like, okay, let's work on how we want to operate the actual bar, and then we're going to start rolling out what we want this bar to kind of be from a, how we're going to present it to other people, what we want people to look and feel when they come into it. I mean, essentially, there's 3 rooms to it. It's a big space, and we've only been focusing on 1/3 of it. So now we're going to start rolling out the other 2/3 and figuring it out. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
The real other question is, when are we going to do this show from there?
we will be doing it from there, I think, this year, because I'm going to Belgium with one of you 4 in the room, because we do have producer Serge here. So I'll let you guys know who is coming with me to Belgium later on. Just kidding. It's Steve. We take a
I was
trip
hoping.
every year.
I was really hoping.
Your name, Steve, I think, mentioned your name, and I think I shot him down. I said, no, it's the 3 of us. That's
Yeah.
it. So I don't know where we were going with that.
When is the show going to be from?
So we're going to have to record some shows ahead of time. So I was thinking about doing it at this space. We do have a room that is going to be set up to be able to do shows from there, so I want to kind of play around with it. I am sad about the idea of not doing the show from Studio B. I'm not sad about just like walking 10 feet and doing the show rather than getting on the highway and driving down to Bridgeport.
Well, I think you got to alternate because coming to Bridgeport is part of the experience. So it doesn't have to be every time, but it should be at least some of the time.
All right, we're going to take a break in a moment. We're going to take a short promo break, talk to some other stuff. But what do you think about this, Steve, before we go there? 3 weeks there, 1 week here. That 1 week we're not here is first Thursday, and CBS can do their first Thursday there if they would want to.
It'd be pretty cool.
That'd be pretty cool. All right, on that note, we'll be back in a bit. Welcome back to Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn. I'm joined by Steve Mastny, Doug Valicki, and Tom Corder. And so I know, Doug, that you said you were excited for some of the topics on tonight's show. You said you were
I was excited for the guests.
Oh, you were excited for the guests. Sorry. Okay. Well, never mind.
I am excited for the topics, too. Yeah.
We talked about the topics earlier. It's kind of that baseball mentality. You know,
I equated this to the July talk radio where
there's nothing to talk about.
Nothing going on, so you talk about.
There have been no acquisitions.
What's the deal?
There's nothing big. Nobody put some stuff out.
It's funny that it came across that way because I guess, yeah, I mean, there's times when the news is so apparent that we have to talk about it, at least on a show like this where it's kind of formatted that way where people it is highly topical. But I really do just love the more, sitting around the bar talking about, like Cliff Claveny type of topics, which is a little bit more what we're on here. I've got 2 letters. I don't know if we're going to get to them both, but yeah, this is one that I was just. The first topic is one that I was literally just asked myself. I didn't answer it, but I asked myself while I was walking the dog just like 4 days ago. And the question that I asked myself was, is Heady Topper the most significant beer in craft beer terms, I'm talking, of the last 25 years?
You didn't put that out there. You didn't say craft beer terms in your notes.
Okay,
you didn't
fine.
Say craft beer. I'll
in my
play
mind,
the game. I'll play the game.
Yeah. But no, you don't. Let's take that off the board then.
Okay.
Is Heady Topper the most significant beer of the last 25 years? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Is it a significant beer of the last 5 to 10? Yes. It's probably one of my top 25 over the last 25 years. I actually wrote a list of my 25,
Wow.
but it's not the number one.
And
There's
okay.
2 guys here with notebooks who are both like tabbing. I'm like, I got lists of 25 beers here.
I thought
Impressive.
long and hard. I did research. I thought about
I
this.
appreciate that.
I gave
today.
it some thought, but I only came up with one because I wanted like my most significant beer. of the
So
last 25
25 years ago. I mean, all right. So that takes us to
1992.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, not that long ago, seeming because we're getting old.
And not
it's,
a lot
It's a long time ago. A lot has happened in craft beer since then.
Well, certainly,
but not in the 90s. There's not a lot that happened in the 90s
No.
that would even fall into this. So it's like the top 25 is almost the same, or the last 25 years is almost the same as the top last 15 or maybe even 10 years.
yeah, I would say
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
all right.
we talked earlier. Sierra Nevada is out of the pale is out of this range because that was like 82, 83, somewhere around
in
there.
craft terms, I think that's still probably the most significant. I would say.
1980 was Sierra, right? That's when they started, and I think they
Yeah.
started with the pale ale.
Yeah.
But that would be my argument for the most significant beer in the last 25 years is still Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, because in 1992, 25 years ago, it was still very influential. Less so now, but certainly the first time I tried it in like it was probably 2000. It was probably the year
I
2000.
think 95 was the first year I tried it. Yeah.
And it had a major impact on like what is American beer. It's got all this hop character to it, and that's kind of what ushered in IPAs eventually. So I don't think you can really point to one IPA that ushered in the IPA craze. I mean, you could point to several maybe, but I don't think one.
I meant I guess I should have Well, no. I mean, it's fine that it's open-ended.
but, yeah.
In my mind, it's fine that it is open-ended. In my mind, I was thinking one, craft, and two, to have come out in the past 25 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
but like so a lot of what I looked at was part of it was beer style, but part of it was its influence on the region. My list is heavily Midwest skewed, obviously being a Midwest brewer. How it's presented, how it's packaged. There are a lot of different things that are influential. So like Dale's Pale Ale in cans, Daisy Cutter in 16-ounce cans, 4-packs in Chicago, Ninja versus Unicorn with what Pipeworks did and dominating the self-distribution world in Chicago. I think all of those in the Pale Ale IPA range play and can play almost as, if not more than, Heady Topper in this area.
But well, I'm not saying that. Now you're adding little categories.
Oh,
now
I'm
it's
absolutely
Midwest,
adding categories,
which is fair.
Well, because
if I can add them, you can add them. I suppose.
I mean, other hoppy stuff that I have on here. Enjoy By. I think the Enjoy By labeling and streamlining of your distribution process and getting people to understand that IPAs are fresh. That's up there.
The Stone Enjoy By IPA.
Yeah, the Stone
just
Enjoy
for anyone
By.
out there who doesn't. Yeah.
I put Gumball and Zombie Dust in. You got to mention Dust. If you
Yeah.
don't, you're not on not on this show. But I put those in the same level. I'm at like 10 hoppy beers before I even batted an eye.
Quick pause. Who brought the New Glarus Belgian Red? It was you, wasn't it, Masty? That beer
It's really good.
Exceptionally good. It is so good.
So for the last few years, the Serendipity has kind of taken some of its place and has been really good. But
not as good.
I've got the two side by side here right now. Actually, in a 1976 Illinois Association of Highway Engineers mug and a 2017 Illinois Association of Highway Engineers mug. And I gotta say, the Wisconsin Belgian Red, the cherry is it good? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's better than it usually is. It's not so cloyingly sweet.
Yeah,
there's just more balance and goodness. And
yep, it's great beer.
Who brought this Hill Farmstead Mary? It's in like a can with a green label. It's real simple.
I brought that thanks to my coworker Chris. Brought it back last week.
This is pretty dang good too. I found a can with about 3 ounces left. I'm like, well, I guess I'll just drink the rest of this can.
What do you think, Mr. Masney, about the last 25 years? Beers, any parameter you want, but how about in the context as well, if you're thinking outside that of craft and introduced?
I'm going to say Bourbon County Stout.
Yep, Bourbon County's up there.
Because, I mean, obviously, Chicago, Midwest centric and everything, so there's that. But that beer really spawned, I think, a bit of a craze. Eric Hobbs, Tom's founding partner of Penrose, was integral to the marketing of that beer with the whole Black Friday thing.
Yeah.
I think it was 2010 was the first year they did it at
that's a great
Binny's.
call, too.
And that
has
was a
become,
complete game changer. That everyone is
become
doing
the blueprint.
that. And Goose, I think Goose at that time was doing things that were very, not just cutting edge, but trailblazing as far as what they were making, how they were marketing it, what they wanted to do. Not everything was a success. They had the whole, Sisters thing where they wanted to sell them only in restaurants, and they were all $25 price points, and that was at least too far ahead of its time, if not a straight up not that great idea. But they had a lot of hits, and Bourbon County was one of them. And I've kind of fallen off of the wagon, both from a Goose and AB and Bourbon County standpoint. It's like, they had all the issues with all the beers going bad, and you buy a bunch of bad beer, and you're like, I don't want to go through this recall nonsense. And it really, I was one of their biggest promoters, and not so much anymore. But that beer had a ton of influence on me, and I think on the scene in general.
And not just, Eric, but the guy to your right has
Doug? Doug's to his right.
But
Tom was only integral in making the beer.
Only integral. But he was also there. You were making the beer at its that is not a cow. That is a cat that is now sitting in your lap.
It's a black cat.
Studio
That's
B.
bad karma right there. No, I wasn't making the beer. I was just the guy behind the scenes. That recipe has been
No, you
there
weren't the guy
for,
behind the scenes, but you were
Yeah,
in the
no,
barrel.
I was. With John
What were you
Lafler,
doing?
with John Lafler and I, trying to push things forward with Stoutfest and saying, okay, let's try this. I remember John coming to me and saying, hey, we should do cherry or coffee foam for Bourbon County coffee tasting. We should do cherry caviar type things, sodium alginate type things, and just saying yes to all of those ideas and pushing that forward. I think that helped a lot of the Bourbon County variants kind of come into the forefront, because before 2008, 2009, it was Bourbon County, and you never want to touch Bourbon County, and you don't want to change it. But there were so many things going on then. Okay, vanilla. Okay,
coffee,
smoke. Let's take a one of those little kitchen smoking guns and see how we can infuse that flavor in there. And I give all the credit to Lafler and to the brewers at Goose to kind of push that forward. My job there was just to help make things happen. So I am not the originator. I am not the guy who created the recipe. I helped make things happen.
You're the guy who didn't screw it up and lose Steve Mastney as a fanboy of Bourbon County.
Well, it was also, I think, to me, in my mind, that was the heyday of that brand for me personally. So, Doug, anything you want me? Should I go next, or I've been going last lately, last and least.
Let Doug go.
I'm ready.
Go.
So, I kind of went through a similar thought process that you guys did with Sierra Nevada. We're thinking of Sierra Pale, thinking about its importance, but then I kind of went back to, you probably mean a new beer, and but it wasn't Sierra that I was going to say if we were just talking about important beers in the, call it, early 90s. I was actually going to say Sam Boston Lager, but attribute a lot of that to the marketing behind it and kind of positioning craft, better tasting beer as a revolutionary, rebellious.
What was his saying? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
They spill more beer.
Oh, yeah. Than whoever makes.
We make all year.
Yeah, but that's what they do now.
But so that's I was going to make a case for that, but then I realized, well, that came out in the mid to late 80s, and that wouldn't really be the last 25 years. I was going for a new beer. And then I started looking at Heady Topper and did not want to say Heady Topper, and I'm still not going to say Heady Topper, but I had to stare at it for a long time and come up with, where we are today and what was more important than Heady Topper. And it is up there, in my opinion, and I couldn't get it any farther down than number 2. And the only thing I could get number 1, and there may be a little bias in this, especially based on my introduction, but
was Revolution Cross of Gold. Now available in 15 packs. Yeah, 18 packs, yeah.
All right, I'm done. No, I was going to say Pliny the Elder.
Yeah, seriously.
And Pliny the Elder, Heady Topper didn't get canned, and I attribute all of its notoriety and all of its success to the cans. It didn't get canned until 2011. So, 6-7 years ago, I can't call a beer the most important beer in the last 25 years that was made six years ago. The current owners of Russian River took over in 2002, and so closer to our range. And Pliny the Elder was winning. Pliny the Elder is credited, and I've never heard anyone dispute it, as the first ever Imperial IPA.
Oh, I think that's factual, that they're the double IPA or whatever.
Given that that paved the way, Pliny is, it's hard. It's an East Coast, West Coast thing. You could argue all day, Skip Bayless versus Stephen A. Smith, about which is, more popular. But I think the Pliny's been around the longest, and then you loop in the Pliny the Younger.
Get that cat out of here, please.
I don't even like cats.
I don't either.
People were waiting in line for Pliny the Younger years before they were waiting in line for Bourbon County Stout, for Heady Topper, for that once a year pour of a triple IPA, which was unheard of based on Pliny the Elder, which is the double IPA that's been around, I think, at least twice as long as Heady Topper. I mean, at least Heady Topper in a can.
And even little things, I think...
I totally agreed with Heady Topper being in the discussion, but I came up, in my opinion, with a better rationale for the Pliny the Younger, kind of combined with its the younger component, and what that did for creating excitement and bringing craft beer to another level of enthusiasm and willingness to go out of your way for a beer, and what that's done. So I put that at the top of my list.
See, I'd even go 2 different Russian River beers before I went Heady. So I'd go both their hoppy, either Pliny and or in their sour range, choose one of their sour range, and I feel like they
have
helped.
to pick one though.
I would go Consecration. Consecration's
the first. That and Temptation were the first 2 that I was ever exposed to.
And I feel like that helped usher the sour wave in. To
me, that's just not. I could give you a monologue on my love of Russian River and how that turned me into a Penrose fan from the beginning. But to me, it's just not enough of an audience compared to the IPA to crown it with this. But that's why I'd put Heady Topper before it, just because of the masses it involves.
The overall influence.
I went Heady at 11. That's my number.
11? 11. You are nuts.
Heady at 11.
What did you put in front of it?
I put Bourbon County, my Three Floyds combo, Left Hand Nitro, because of the Nitro, taking Guinness handles.
You are insane.
No, taking Guinness handles, putting... because the packaging side is part of it. And
you're right.
Before Left Hand Nitro, it was Guinness, and then they took those handles.
That opened up the Nitro handle.
And that opened up the
everyone.
Nitro handle to craft. Pliny is up there at 6. Russian River Sours at 7. I put Hunapu Dark Lord above that. I put Hunapu kind of first A, Dark Lord B.
That's just wrong.
No, because of the spiced adjunct stout.
The Mexican hot chocolate stout.
Mexican hot chocolate stout.
Exactly.
They were the first, right?
The
they
Mayan
were the
stout.
first.
I would put those all above Heady.
You just don't like New England style
No.
IPAs. Because you're...
No. Absolutely not. Don't say that.
I mean,
Do
I
not
think
say
you
that.
could almost
It's so
argue
true.
that Heady, though, isn't really a New England style IPA in the sense that
doesn't matter.
the modern ones
It
are.
doesn't matter. I think that's... So, first of all, let me just put it out there to people that... I'm not saying that I necessarily think it is. It was a question I had, and I kind of stopped myself. I've gotten in the habit of doing that and said, well, let's just hash this out on air. And I didn't start thinking of, other ones. I think Bourbon County, is a strong contender. I think Left Hand Nitro is a ridiculous contender. I think that Pliny the Elder is legit. I still think... To me, maybe, I don't know. I think it still might be Pliny because, well, think about this. This is my reasoning.
I'd go Pliny 1. I'm not arguing Pliny 1.
I'm sorry.
You're going Heady 1.
I'm Heady 1.
I'd go Heady 1 of last
but
5 years.
Why?
Not 25.
Fine. That's fine. But think of all the explosion has been in the past 5 years, and it's almost been with all of the overall trend away from the Pliny beers towards a broader audience.
I think
less bitterness, more juicy, these more exotic hops. I'm sorry, Doug.
I think if you maybe worded it as what is the most important beer that's gotten us to where we are and where we sit right now, with what's trending now, then I think there's your case for Pliny.
Sure.
I'm with Doug on this one.
But it's more fun. It's more fun to word it as the most significant beer of the past 25 years.
Heady's number 2 for me.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's not. It's onesie twosies. But
I really do think that the right now is the key because the New England style, whether it's turbid or not, but just the juiciness, the less bitterness. This was a homebrewing trend. Heady Topper was into it. This is where things are right now. In 5 years, are they going to be here? I would be very surprised if they are. A few years ago, there was a big craze in white IPAs and things. That was a flash in the pan. But more broadly, sours became very popular. They're still popular. They're not like the cutting edge, most cool new thing. Before sours, it was gigantic bourbon barrel, this, that, and the other. And before that, it was super bitter IPAs. And I think that if you sit in any of those time periods, that you can come up with, okay, well, super bitter IPA is Pliny. The giant bourbon barrel beer is probably Bourbon County. Sour beer, you could talk about Russian River. You could talk about the Duchess, which was just a kind of a general Belgian beer that a lot of people like to sour.
Lawfully.
But here's the thing: is I think the ripples of Pliny, Heady, are going really deep. They're going to New Belgium, Citra.
They're going to the grocery.
Citradelic.
They're going to the grocery stores.
Totally, man. All these fruited IPAs, I think, can be traced, to these New England beers, these juicy.
Really, I totally
do.
put them in a different beast. I think those are still rooted in the kind of more bitter pale ale, but fruited. I think they're different beasts.
Okay, I mean that's fair.
It's an interesting point, though, Chris. I hadn't thought about it.
And I just think that whole flavor profile trend is going towards fruitier flavors, lower alcohol. Lower bitterness,
0 IBU.
Yeah, 0 IBU, and just more palatable for the mass consumer who can literally step in, and if you gave somebody a Pliny, they would often, I would imagine, back in the day, it would just be way too aggressive for somebody just walking up to that beer. But people have Pliny or Treehouse or that sort of stuff, and they're like, "Whoa, this stuff is great! I love it." I have people come into the tap room and say, "I love these New England styles. I love those things," and that's happening to some extent with sour beers, as you were saying, Steve, Duchess, and stuff like that. And I think, honestly, Bourbon County has become a gateway bourbon barrel beer. If you taste some old Bourbon Counties, that beer was aggressive. And I remember it being too much for me when I was already into beer, and I had Bourbon County, and it was too boozy. It was too aggressive. I get it. Too much for me. I can't. It's like drinking a spirit. And
it was once described to me as a beer that you could set down on the counter, take a flight, go across the country, come back a week later, be like, "Oh, hey, I forgot I had this beer." Take another sip, and it would still be fine. And I literally had that experience today. It had been out in my garage for like 10 days. It was a half bottle. I poured some in a glass.
I had been in Germany.
It still tastes great. That beer is insanely bulletproof, which it's mind-boggling what happened with the recalls. I mean, it's so unfortunate.
Right.
But and I wanted to bring up, just because Omar Shocker in the chat room brought it up and producer Serge was good enough to say it. What about the influence of Sophie? Sophie from Goose is like a good gateway sour, and I don't think it had enough overall like distribution to really make this cut at all. But are there any gateway sours? Because Duchess is pretty dang sour. I mean, is sour a thing where like either you like it or you don't? Because for me, it took time to get into the pond, and Sophie helped me there.
I think it can. I just don't think I don't think that we're there yet. I think in maybe 15 years we could be saying that there was a beer that's around now that led people into the sour beers, and that's why sour beer is ubiquitous at high-end restaurants now, and it's just considered alongside a wine, and that it's got this acid profile or something.
We've been saying that for 10 years. It's not.
I'm just saying maybe. I mean, but
we all hope it is.
But the hoppy thing is here. I mean, look at the hop market, this whole insane juiciness, this just the hops that were in Pliny are like almost passé now in a lot of ways.
And,
you're picking up all that stuff on spot market right now for dirt cheap and pallet quantities.
All you want, all you can eat.
Right. And I love those West Coast style beers, and I've had a Pliny just recently. And in fact, I did a little video where it was one of these unfiltered beers from Firestone Walker versus a Pliny, and I preferred the Pliny, but I said I get it. This beer is juicier. It's sweeter. It's not bitter, which is, kind of goes hand in hand. It is way more approachable. And I'm curious if in 5 more years that it'll be even more leaning towards heady. As just, I see the market going there.
We're out of heady range.
And it's also the whole 4-pack.
4-pack 16-ounce cans. This is a different beast than what heady was 4 years ago. I mean, we're in this ultra juicy, like, heady wasn't 0 IBU.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
It still had some bitterness, and so we're past
that.
It may have kicked us into that
right
thought process and flavor profile, but we're past it, and we're even going into new range in the Trillium world and
Negative IBUs.
Heady is
Yeah.
75 IBUs.
there you go.
Heady
See,
is
that's
very
actually
bitter.
It is
that's,
very bitter.
That's like almost West Coasty bitter, like
Very.
yeah. So I would put these in a different beast than that.
So has Penrose made a Northeast IPA yet?
We haven't made a Northeast IPA, but we made a Midwest IPA that's in the can that's in front of three of these guys right now. So that's the blank cans in front of you. It's called the Dorado.
Blank cans with stickers? No.
No, but absolutely, yeah.
But the whole like out the door, two people,
You saw
small breweries doing this thing.
saw
This
the Hill
is all a
Farmstead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
Hill
this
Farmstead
stuff is
cans.
kind of, I think, a descendant. I'm not saying that.
Heady isn't what I
Yeah.
consider today's New England IPA,
No.
but they popularized they were the first sought-after can that would make your friends ooh and ah, and you could show up with multiple 4-packs at a party and get high fives from all your friends. How did you get that? It's just a fun thing to be able to do, and I'm all for that. But they were like the first to do it. They kind of created the can. I'm all for that, saying Heady created the can craze, and it happened to be 16 ounces. It didn't necessarily need to be, but it was. So I don't think the size of the can mattered that much, but they created the hard to find, supply couldn't keep up with demand can for the first time that got notoriety around the country.
Doug is
And
totally
cool.
making your point way better than you did.
I mean, that's why I have them on. That's great. I think it's time that I mention to you that we're listening to it as well. WLPNLP Chicago 105.5 FM, Lumpin' Radio. I think we're about due to take a break. We're going to be gone for 5 or 10. It usually gets to be about 10. If you're listening on iTunes, it'll sound like about 0 seconds, but that's fine. One day we're going to leave the music in there just to mess with everybody. But why don't you just kick back, crack a Pliny or maybe a Heady, and decide which one you think is more significant in the next 10 minutes while you listen to some tunes from DJ producer Serge, and we'll be back with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Now that's the music I need to come into. Whenever I'm about to say something, I need that kind of horn blare and stuff like that. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I am your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by Steve Masney, Tom Corder, and Doug Balicki. Why did I say them in a different order this time? Because they were standing in a different order in front of me. Funny how fast 10 minutes goes. I said we were going to take 5. We took probably like 11. Always tends to go that way.
Serge and I were ready to come back without you, but you showed up in the nick of time.
It's true. I heard the horn blare, and I knew, ooh, I'm being called. Well, I think we definitively and unanimously decided that Heady Topper was the most significant beer of the past 25 years. After
Probably the last 2,500 years, really.
Yeah, second only to Left Hand Milk Stout on Nitro. And other than that, somebody just hit me with something.
So in 15 years, when everyone's drinking nitros, we can play this for you and be like, look, Chris, Tom was right.
It has nothing to do with Guinness, who invented the style. It has to do with Left Hand, who took it from them. And how is Left Hand doing? They're doing really well, right?
They live in Colorado.
I like them. No, I like Left Hand a lot. I like their beers. I like them a lot. So there were a couple articles I read about IPAs. I thought it kind of would bleed well in, the Heady Topper conversation would blend well into this conversation. There were 2 blog posts that I read. Well, one was from our friend Jeff Allworth, who was a little bit off-put when he was on the show about how much of a friend I was of him without him knowing that I respected what he did, from All About Beer. And the other one was from John Urch from the Drinking Classes, and it was about IPAs. And John Urch was basically saying that, wink, wink, IPAs are doomed. Basically that we have become so spoiled with how fresh we get our IPAs that the types of IPAs we are now enjoying are so reliant on incredibly fleeting flavors generally that it's not really sustainable for something to become mass market, because once you have a beer that is an IPA of that style that is brewery fresh, right off the line or something like that, or within 2 weeks, that when you have one that's 3 months or 4 months, it's just it not only pales in comparison, but is just almost undrinkable. And that you can't really build a national brand or an internet, let alone international brand around it otherwise. And that there's been a lot of styles in the past that thought they were going to dominate the world. That doesn't necessarily mean because IPAs are so popular right now. Porter became extinct. And it was the most popular style in the world. A lot of people don't realize that, but porters became extinct, and it's it's could potentially happen, I guess, with IPAs as well. He said, he doesn't necessarily think that's going to be the case anytime soon, if ever,
because they're so fresh, because they taste good, because people like them. They're going to be not so good later.
Well, it's the qualities. Are those qualities scalable? This ultra fresh.
Do they need to be?
Well, that's what somebody came back with. Stan Hieronymus came back and said, are these flavors inherently unstable, or can we add stability to it? And then Jeff Allworth came back and had a kind of reply post on All About Beer's website saying that, maybe the fact that they do taste so much better on tap rooms and on draft when they're super fresh rather than sitting in, big chain stores and stuff like that, these IPAs I'm talking about, maybe it'll refuel a comeback of draft of the the pub, because the pub's kind of a dying thing.
More Tom's point, maybe, unless I misinterpreted, but essentially that when you say does it need to be scalable, maybe some of the best beers and the beers that everyone will demand won't be large scale. Everyone will be demanding really good, really interesting, really fresh, and as a result, there will be lots and lots of people drinking fairly local beer, not because it's local, but because it's the only beer that's not more than a few weeks old.
Does Heady Topper need to be a nationwide brand? The answer is no.
Right.
It doesn't need to be. And so it doesn't have to be. So why try to make it? Why try to be a 1 million to 2 million barrel brewery a year if you don't need to be? If you're happy doing what you do and don't want to take over the world, do it. Make the best beer you can. Keep it fresh. Keep it local. That's great.
Well, so what about, though, like, Lagunitas or Revolution or Goose Island, to name three, distinct but going after the same market to some extent, Chicago breweries?
Revolution's a little bit smaller than Lagunitas.
Their ambitions, though, are large, I think. The goal is we want to make great beer and we want to sell a lot of it. And if, so Lagunitas IPA is a good example of a beer that you can make. It's reasonably shelf stable. Obviously, it's better early than later, but it's not like some of these. I think that the article is more about the super fresh, super juicy, et cetera, tastes like garbage after 6 weeks, like literally tastes like garbage.
But here's the thing: do it. Taste the Lagunitas IPA at 0 days or whatever, Bright Tank. Go to the brewery, get it a week or two old. Taste it at the grocery store, 6 months old, or 30 days or 60 days, whatever old. It's distinctly different. We say, oh, these new styles are so much more fragile. Every beer is fragile. Every beer is a product of flavor. It'll go downhill the day after it's brewed.
Or change.
It'll change.
But some are more fragile than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if a beer tastes less good, that's one thing. If a beer starts to taste actively bad, which some of these new ones do, that's different.
Actively bad is a
subjective
subjective term.
True.
To me, any oxidized flavor, any
He likes
hops,
to drink garbage.
No, I don't, and that's the problem.
Because he said they literally taste like garbage.
I only drink my IPAs out of the Bright Tank. That's it. That's the only time I drink them.
I don't always drink IPAs.
Ideally,
when
it's
I
right
do, it's straight from the Bright Tank.
Right before, really, when you transfer to the Bright Tank, it's already a little late, isn't it? It's got to be right at the tail end of fermentation in the conical.
Straight out the whirlpool, I just burn my esophagus.
Just eat a mouthful of hops. That's all it is. To this point, I think there are a couple different things. So it's the IPA freshness, but it's also the resurgence of the pub culture, and I think the resurgence of the pub culture is more dependent on people understanding their beer lists and not having 200 beers on tap and having a well curated list of 10 to 12 different styles, some strongly local presence, some great national brands that do things really well, and balancing everything on your board. You have to know what's on your board. You have to know what it tastes like. You have to know, all right, if I serve a beer that doesn't look right, I can't serve it. And your bartenders have to know, your managers have to know, all across the board. And that's how you will drive the resurgence of the pub culture, is having people that care and understanding that that's how the beer should be poured.
Kind of hit both sides of things there, but
boom.
Oh, I thought that was Doug. I wasn't looking. Boom. All right, mic drop. So this topic's over. No, I think what the guy was getting at with IPAs are doomed. It's not that these. I think it is that these have to be hyper local if we're going to continue to go down this path of ultra fresh or bust for these IPAs, and that you cannot build a national, let alone international brand, let alone take over the beer market from a stylistic standpoint with a hyper-local model, because one company cannot be everywhere all at once. And we've seen that these breweries, these larger breweries are already trying to have footprints all over the place and have a local sense, but you can't always be brewing everywhere. You can't be essentially self-distributing the day of all the time everywhere, which is what you would need for a style to take over, at least from what John Urch was saying. And that that is, when you look at the styles that have dominated globally in the past, it is because big players have pushed these beers all over the place, and there has been some stability. I mean, even the original IPA, which was not a huge, stylistic success, I guess. It was, meant to last. And porter certainly was a soured beer somewhat, and probably, right?
There may have been
not soured, but
an acidic component to it. It's
right.
Not a sour porter is not a porter.
Sure, but it certainly was an aged beer. And it might have taken on some complexities, some sweet and sours, some stuff like that.
Almost certainly some Brettanomyces character.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And then you had lagers, which I think hold up pretty darn well in comparison to a Treehouse Julius, something like that. And is this style, and especially in the direction that stuff is going, able to be scaled up as massively as some of these beers were by the big players who are going to set trends? And he's like, or are these big players going to find a niche and use that instead, and start leveraging, the fact that Allagash White, I think, was the example that was used. Tastes amazing fresh. After a month, pretty awesome. After 3 months, still pretty awesome. And after 6 months, pretty darn good.
I don't know about that. Any beer after 6 months. Lagers are not good. They're not aged. They're not meant to be aged. They're meant to be drank fresh. All right, maybe early on they have a stronger sulfur component than later. 2-3 weeks, great. 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, in package at the store, it's not good.
Well, then what about this side of it? What about that IPAs cost more than almost anything that isn't barrel aged or barrel fermented, and that now you have another reason to kind of, for the big guys to want to try to steer things in another direction, that whenever there's a little nibble of interest, they would want to try to push something one way. I don't know. I thought it was. I'm not saying that I think IPAs are here for a long, long, long time. To which end, I mean, this guy said there's probably a lot of people who said, well, porter's here forever, and then it became extinct. So
I think
it was an interesting.
I think you're right that they're here for a long time, not going anywhere, but I disagree that the big guys can't do better and get more involved in this. I just think it's going to cost them more money than it ever has, and they're going to have to get used to that. It's not as easy as it used to be, because we're doing it now. Our number one focus aside from quality is freshness, and you as a large brewery that's in multiple states, you face this very fascinating, especially if you're interested in
a logistics geek,
analytics, predictive models of, you've got your beer on the retail shelf, you've got the distributor that you need to keep in stock, and then you've got your production schedule that's, if we're just talking about IPAs, is, minimum 3 weeks out, and making sure that you don't overproduce to the point where you have more beer than your distributors need, and then it's sitting in your own location getting old. And you don't want to underproduce and risk going out of stock and lose placements on the shelf. And it's a very complicated problem, and the wider you go, you can still do it. You can still have fresh, 3 to 6 week IPA out there on chain shelves across the country, but you need to invest in very smart, talented people to stay on top of it, and put a significant amount of efforts, more than has ever needed to be done a couple years ago, into constantly every day looking at inventories. The nice thing is there are systems out there these days that allow breweries to see into their distributors' warehouses and see how fast their beer is selling, and there's a term rate of sale, which is constantly changing, and it can change day to day, week to week. If there's a bad week of rain here, then your draft sales are all of a sudden going to plummet, and there's no way to predict that. But those are kind of some of the things you have to factor in and try to build in, and that's why it's very, very complicated, and it's a fun exercise. And you have to be so far out and so far ahead of it, because like I said, that you're planning your production. It takes, call it three-ish, a little bit more weeks to make an IPA, and then it takes time to get it out to the market. Your local distributors can pick up the beer maybe every day, a couple times a week, but then the farther out of market you go, there's not daily, weekly pickups. It's a little less often. So just timing all that, it can be done. It just, like I said, it will take more effort, more money, more resources than it ever did before. I think that's where it will go. So that kind of talent will become in demand. And
you think software is the key to that? Software is the key to you are with a large brewery, understanding the models and the analytics.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's 50-50 people and software. You need people that understand it. And there's more breweries that need those people than those people exist, but they're kind of being created now. Like, people who are good at one thing that are the right fit for this are kind of being molded into the perfect folks that are kind of a combination of sales and logistics. And it's interesting. I'm right in the middle of it now, and it's been fun to watch and see it get better and better as we go.
So I have in the past talked a lot about how my fear for some of these big breweries, and I'm talking about the ABIs of the world, who are getting into the craft game, but really want to just bring everyone back to a singularity again, where they want everyone drinking essentially the same beer or moderate versions of it enough to have, some sort of like self-identity that they drink this and not that, but it's all the same stuff because it's just so much easier to figure out. I mean, are the logistics of a Busch Light versus a Budweiser really that much different? Probably not at all, from a production standpoint to a distribution standpoint to anything. And I never really thought about it. I mean, to me, it only solidifies the idea that they want to get back to that point for just that reason, because it's easier to have everything kind of be homogenous and just push things in a single direction. And I'm not saying, I just think that's kind of a reality of it, is this freshness thing and the rapid drop off makes it, and the added expense makes it.
They can't be sloppy anymore with the dates like they used to be. There used to be such a big room for error, and now that is tightening quickly.
They don't care what beer you drink as long as it's their beer. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, okay, whether it's...
You came really close to a current logo of theirs. But anyway, slogan rather.
So it's all they care about is that it's their beer. So whether it's this IPA from this brewery in California they bought, or this brewery that they bought in Illinois or in Seattle or whatever, they just want it to be theirs.
But once they have it all, I think they're going to then want to bring it in, make it as easy and streamlined from a production standpoint, a.k.a. a profitability standpoint, as possible.
Absolutely. There's no reason.
That's what they want.
No
and
reason
I think
not to.
That's why they want these sets. They want to control the sets, because I think they want to slowly say, look, we have all you need. Yep. And for people out there, my arms are wide apart. I have everything from a barrel-aged beer to a budget-level light lager. And then slowly their hands are going to start coming in, once they have the market. And I want them to just be like, here, this is all you need. We got it. Don't worry about everything else. I think the cat's out of the bag a little bit. The horse is out of the barn, whatever analogy you want to use that's animal related. But I think that's what they want it to be. They want it to be like the good old days, when it was just them, some regional players that they will quickly acquire and squash, and then maybe one big rival.
I don't think they'll squash. They won't squash. They just want to control that set. They don't want to. I don't know if they want to shrink that set. They just want that set. They want as much of that set as possible, and they want you to know. Well, they don't want you to know, but they want. This idea of choice is there, but I'm able to pick it.
Well, think about it this way. Like, if everybody bought Heinz and Heinz had the ketchup market, they don't want to put different varieties of Heinz out there. They don't want you to even think that there
aren't there 57.
Right, right. But
look at the Heinz shelf. Look at the Heinz shelf. There's Heinz. Right. There's another brand.
But now there is to take up shelf space. But the idea is, do you want people to start thinking that there are other options out there? No, you want to think, here's where you go for ketchup. You just get that, pull it, and anything outside of that.
The fact that people want choices, they will play into that and say, you have choices. You don't know they're all my choices, but they're choices.
Right.
You can have this slightly sweet ketchup or this slightly spicy one.
Right.
It's a different. This is a label with brown paper on it, or this is your traditional one. It's the same thing as the beer aisle. Mm-hmm. They want the illusion of choice.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think what they want is no choice, but they'll settle for the illusion of it.
And I would say that the one difference potentially is...
How did this get there? How do we get there?
Well, there is not just an illusion of choice, though, in the beer aisle, because even if all the beer that you're buying is coming from the same company, if you've got a stout and a brown ale and a pale ale and a lager and a sour, I mean, these are genuinely different flavors. They're not the same thing, even if the same person is producing them.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I'm saying where they want it to go. But I think I've essentially taken this and just
driven it into the ground.
Not even driven to the ground, just mutated it so much that it has no resemblance to where we began. So I think it's about time we get
Heady Topper, best beer in the world
ever. Universe. No beer has ever been created in the universe that's better or will be created. So
Bold statements.
yeah. Never mind. I was going to say something. I'll hold my tongue. We're going to get to letters. Letters is when people can write things electronically often to us and have us weigh in on it or let us know what they think about certain things. If you want to actually write a letter, you can send it to 3219 South Morgan Street in Chicago, Illinois. That is the address of the Co-Prosperity Sphere. Chicago, Illinois, 60608, 3219 South Morgan Street. Send it to Steve Maston. Well, don't send it to Steve because I don't get on another beer show. Send it to me or to Ed or anybody at the Co-Pro. Just make sure that you have some mention of beer that isn't Beer Download, and I'll get the letter. And even if Steve gets it, he'll quickly realize where it's supposed to go.
Probably send it to
Steve's
Chris.
a good guy.
Unless
Good
it's really
guy,
interesting, and then we'll take it.
Yeah. Or you can just write an electronic letter to insiders@craftbeertemple.com, which is where both the letters I have tonight, we'll see if we get to them both, came from. The first one is from the Overlord. Haven't heard from him in quite a while. Great to get a letter from the Overlord. And he writes, "Hi, it's great to be listening to the show again." Oh, there you go. And congrats for recently passing 100 episodes. I think I have heard you talk about the fact that as beer drinkers mature, they no longer chase the latest, quote, it beers and focus on drinking quality, fresh beer. I have noticed the same pattern in my drinking style, and I guess my question is, how do you think that mindset will affect the industry when the overall beer drinker population reaches that stage as well? Or do you think that will ever happen and that the majority of people just don't care? Tied to that, I have sensed the general, quote, love that the insiders have for the haze craze. Do you think that the majority of brewers across the country feel that way, or are you guys in the minority? If the majority feels that way, why or why don't you? So, cheers, the Overlord. So, I guess basically the way I'm reading this is that as people mature, they stop chasing whales, they stop chasing the it beers, and kind of settle into it. And what does that kind of mean as the overall craft beer drinkers kind of mature? And then second, this haze craze thing, do people love it or hate it in the industry in general? So I think the first part to me is the meatier part, the deeper part. Any thoughts? Doug, I thought you might have a take on that. As the market matures and people stop chasing beers or even have the need, the enticement of something new maybe is diminished, is that something that is potentially problematic for craft?
No. So yeah, I was asked this question recently of what I thought what's like the number one thing craft consumers want. Somebody asked me that, and I said, 2 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, I would have not hesitated and said variety, like something new every day. And I definitely feel a lot less of that these days. While it's still there to some extent, absolutely, it's not gone. But I just feel like if we're looking at a bell curve, it's starting to tip past the peak, and we're getting a little more back to people looking for consistency and go-tos and picking up their favorite a little more often, and not a little less of an anti-hero once or twice a year, and a little bit more of anti-hero once a month, and then
something else,
and then plus sure something new. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's.
I think we're in a middle phase right now.
I'm not saying those days are gone by any means, but they're just it's much less exaggerated than it used to be. Where
Thanks, Steve.
You would never. There was the top 10% of beer enthusiasts would never buy something that they could also buy at a grocery store. They always wanted something that was hot off the press, first time ever seen before, and there always was those options. I feel like that's a little less of importance to people these days. And one thing I worry about is that there's not enough new blood coming in, and that it's
new blood. How so?
people just getting into
Drinking
new,
wise.
new customers for a bottle that would go to a bottle shop. I worry that the new customers for a store like the Beer Temple are being created at a slower rate that they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. That those people were coming out of the woodwork all over the place before, and now it's slowed down a little bit.
I think there's just way more outlets for them. I think they're being created probably maybe even a little faster, but there's so much more, competition for their attention.
Right. They can get it at Trader Joe's. They can go to Trader Joe's and find a shelf and say, oh, this is the Chicago shelf. Oh, this is the Belgian shelf, and they'll do it. There's still people doing it. Your 21-year-olds right now, your 22-year-olds are splurging on craft beer at special times. Might not be their only beverage of choice.
Millennials hate craft beer. Haven't you been reading any of these articles from Forbes.com?
Right. Yeah, they're killing it. They're killing everything.
Yeah.
But what I see in our tap room,
guys, hold on for the next 2 minutes.
Oh, great. What I see in our tap room is people come in and they want to try different things, and a lot of it are a younger generation and people straight out of college, and they'll sit down and 4 of them will have a wild and barrel-aged beer, and then they'll try a different one, and then they'll try the IPA and find out what they like. And I think that that's still a huge part of it. I always think, and because I am in that aging craft beer curve, that I want that Pilsner, and I want everybody else to want that Rev Pilsner that I was drinking earlier today, fresh at the tap room.
Nice.
But people are still in that, they're in that mixed 6 craze. They want 6 different beers 6 different times and try something new every time.
I think that there's always going to be new people coming online into the good beer movement, for lack of a better term. Whether it be people who just turned 21 and can finally go to the store themselves and pick out their own beer, or whether it's, that person's dad or mom or aunt or whatever who's like, oh, I never knew that beer could be this way. There's always going to be that. But as the kind of critical mass of good beer drinkers starts to coalesce, and as the group of converts becomes more sizable than the group, holy cow, of new converts, Chris has walked in with a WWF
WWE.
Oh, WWE.
It's E now.
It's a full on, appears to be real wrestling championship belt.
Yeah, it does. That's why I had to go. I had to go and pick it up. Actually, no.
Did you win a wrestling championship recently?
I'm
kind of
it's
away
a long
from pop
story.
culture.
Doug was there; he can explain it. But I'm a little bit behind on the letters because I was, acquiring my latest metal.
Hardware.
The hardware. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Heady wasn't the only champion crowned tonight.
There you go.
Zing. To speak to Doug's other point, though, are people coming into this as much as they were? When I hang out at Maria's /Kimski, I see a lot of people at the bar, a lot of young, trendy people who are apparently living in the Bridgeport area where I just come and hang out, and because I'm an old guy. There are a lot of them ordering, the Russian mules, or however you call them, Moscow mules. And other various drinks. And it's like, there's people ordering beer, but there's a lot of people ordering various mixed drinks, and there's all this cocktail stuff going on. So, 2010 or so, all of a sudden there was like this explosion of growth and everything else. And did we perhaps hit a peak of new interest in this? And yes, obviously there's always going to be more new interest, but is it going to be less intense? Tom says no.
I go.
But Tom,
no.
Tom
way
obviously
no.
has laid his cards on the table. He's all in on the brewing scene, and I guess Chris is in a similar boat. But Doug, you're a you're a numbers guy. You're a data guy. Mm-hmm. Are there any actual non-anecdotal, like, hard numbers on new conversions to this scene or not?
I don't know about new conversions, but there's definitely a lack of growth of the overall category. Beer in general is certainly not growing. Craft is still,
but hasn't for a long time.
Right.
Now, are you
right.
talking our IRI? Is that your
No,
number
I'm
source?
talking.
Because that's a different source.
Well,
like
we're
that's
talking about
like grocery.
According to the BA, I mean, a lot of the top, what was it, like 30 or 16 of the top 32 breweries by BA standards had stagnant or negative volume growth.
Right, those breweries did, but those breweries also pushed to 50 states to try to fill up capacity. Now, what about the bottom 4,000?
Right.
It's 4,760.
Sure, but I think that is such a... We've talked about this. I can't get this darn belt on. Anyway, it's got snaps in the back. It's ridiculous. So, for those of you, it is a real
It ain't easy
belt.
being the champ.
Yeah, it ain't easy. Exactly. I wouldn't know. So, but with the bottom 4,000, I mean, it's still a drop in the bucket. I mean, the volume is on such a steep bell curve that you can, like, people say, like, oh, don't worry, there's still 4,000 breweries out there doing this and that, which is fine, but the overall impact that those 4,000 breweries have, I think, is minor compared to...
What's your impact? Is your impact only dictated by barrels brewed?
Right.
Because that's what you're saying.
They have an outsized cultural impact, for
right,
sure.
Exactly. Or is your impact the people they employ, the economic impact, the kind of surrounding community that each one of those 4,700 makes? And I think that's a huge part of it.
I think there's a symbiosis between the two. I think you have to be strong at the top. I think there is an element of trickle down. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's all just these little guys supporting the big guys. I think it kind of comes from the top down in a lot of ways. People hear about these beers and they want to kind of go out and, oh, I've heard about it. I want to try it at my local. I heard local is the hot new trend right now,
right.
So I want to go out and drink it.
What's your measure of growth? Is it only the Brewers Association defined top 20, or is it all beer, or is it...
I just like the one. There was no reason to kind of parse the data. There's no reason to come up with reasons why. What's your definition? Well, my definition is any number of these ways. And
I don't care about the data. I really don't. Is the person at the bar drinking beer?
And
I'm
happy.
And
right.
happy is the
right.
the pure thing about it.
Right. I mean, and I'm with you, but it's just. I'm holding the belt on with my left hand. It's ridiculous, but I can get through it. Should we get to the second letter or just continue?
So
off
what
on
was the
this
second
letter?
half of that first letter?
Well, Doug, do you want to get to the second letter, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry, let's let Doug dictate for once.
Is that about the cans?
Yeah.
Can sizes?
Yeah. Okay. I thought Doug went.
Everybody likes can sizes.
The second, so thank you, Overlord. Nice to have you back. The second letter, again, insiders at craftbeertemple.com, comes from Neil, this letter. And he says, hello. With 16-ounce cans filling up SKUs, packaging has never been more important to craft beer drinkers. The initial transition from bombers to multi-pack formats clearly had price per ounce benefits. Surely, some craft beer drinkers value the environmental benefits of cans over glass, and a smaller segment likes the ease of trading their NEIPA cans through the mail. Yet the 16-ounce can phenomenon goes beyond even those factors. Recently, Microphone announced that they would transition higher ABV beers to 12-ounce glass 4-packs to give a better value, and the response was lukewarm on social media. Fascinating. Why is this trend towards 16-ounce cans so red hot? Do the insiders feel this format will last, or will fickle consumers want something else after breweries invest in expensive canning lines? Will this importance placed on packaging continue, or will emphasis return to what's in the glass or can? Thanks, Neil. Man, what a great group to have for this letter as well. Thank you so
Heady
much,
Topper.
Neil. Okay, well, there we have it, guys. We'll see you next week. No, I think it's more than that. I mean,
how could
Tom?
it be more
There you
than
go,
that?
Tom. Tom went from 4-pack glass to 4-pack cans, right?
That's true.
At a cost. I mean, there were some other outside issues, but you could have gone from glass to glass. You could have done a bunch of stuff.
Right. We could have gone glass to glass. We could have gone bombers, but the overall market forces were telling us that people wanted beer in cans. And so we listened to people. You got to do it. You got to listen to people. You got to do it. You got to run with that. And so we said, this is
heavy, right?
It's really heavy. It's
Why?
amazing.
No, I'm giving it to you, man.
Why?
Because you're the champ right now. Put it on.
Okay. So it's the first belt I've ever worn of the champion style. But you got to listen to what people want, and people want cans. Go cans. We chose to go 12-ounce cans over 16 cans. We did 16s to start, and I like the drinkability of a 12-ounce can over a 16-ounce can, so that's why we went 12 over 16.
I do agree on the drinkability. At the bottom of a 16-ounce can, your beer is flat. At the bottom of a 12-ounce can,
it's warm.
perfect. It's just where you want it. 12 ounce is the right amount. The big guys figured that out early. We should just follow their lead because they know what they're talking about.
Well, they did it with bottles first, but yeah. Well, that's ridiculous. There's 500 ml bottles and cans and stuff all long ago.
Those are the worst.
Yeah. So
12-ounce cans, perfect.
Well, but what about this whole idea that it's not just about value? It's not just about the fact that bombers are usually a terrible cost per ounce deal for the consumer. So taking a beer, yeah, there you go. See, Doug knows how to rock.
You got to do
Doug,
it that way.
I mean, it's like
First
it's
time,
natural.
I swear. First time.
Yeah. It's a beer that people loved in the 750 format. Everyone now is not listening to me. They're taking out their phone to do a selfie with Doug with the belt because he rocks it so amazingly well, which he does. I'm not going to lie. But
you brought this on, man.
I did not. He
You brought the thing in.
You asked me to bring it on a year and a half ago, and I forgot 8 times, and I remembered tonight.
So
I really thought you had to pee. You were sprinting across the room.
No, I did. It was underneath his chair the whole time. I saw it when I came back.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, back to Neil's letter. I think he deserves a bit of a response. So what about this? And it's amazing to me, and I didn't know about it until I read Neil's letter, is that Mike Palin, who's been on the show, he's got this red-hot brand here in the Chicago market and with geeks nationally, I would say, does everything in 750s. He had done cans a long, long time ago, but he went to 750s because he was brewing at Jerry Nelson's place at Unane, who had a machine for 750s. He's still doing that. Now he's in his own space. He's moving to other formats. He's taking some of these beers that, were really high dollar per ounce when you kind of broke it down because he was selling double IPAs in this thick Belgian glass and is now going to 4-packs, greater value, more drinkability because you have it in a smaller format, a smaller package, 12 ounces, and people are like,
greater value. What's your greater value? I mean, you're paying for 4 bottles over 1 bottle. You're paying for a 4-pack holder over no holder. You're pouring for a case box versus a case box, so even wash on that. You're paying for 4 crowns.
You're
versus
talking about
1
from
crown.
a supplier side.
Yeah, I know, but those costs go into your beer
on.
cost.
No, there's just no way you're going to tell me that a brewery that is releasing stuff exclusively in 750s and then goes down to 4-packs is not passing on a lot of value to the drinker. That's why they do it, or else they wouldn't have. You're doing more. You're swapping value
You're
or
losing
quantity.
value. You're getting quantity. You're losing value. But the bomber
from
model
from the supplier side. I'm talking about from the drinker.
Right? Yeah.
So the drinker is getting more value. The drinker is, and it was still lukewarm.
But you're also paying for glass.
Oh, come on.
You're paying for 4 beers.
I can't believe this is the sticking point here.
But it is.
Well,
that's part of it.
That is a real thing, though. If you're paying, if a bomber costs you $9 and 4 beers cost you $16, yeah, it's a lot better per ounce, but it still costs you more. And if you only want to have it once, that was a big argument in favor of bombers.
$19 cans, I posit people would have loved it.
I don't disagree, but
Well, that's the whole point of the letter. The letter is about why are cans so hot and why is everything else so cool. Not. I mean, the idea is, well, you just broke it. Steve just broke a chair. So, as my brother
Only
used to
part
call it, fatted a chair.
yeah.
He used to break. He's like, oh, I fatted a chair. So that's the term my brother uses. So that to me is telling about how much of it is really about branding, marketing, perception. I mean, there's a lot of beers that are sold in 4-pack, 16-ounce cans at a lot more price per ounce cost that people line up to get, and Mike goes to 4-pack bottles, 12-ounce, not 16-ounce, but I don't think it's a value play here. What do you think, Doug? I mean, you wanted to read this letter. All you've done is wear a belt. You haven't even chimed in.
Well, no, I mentioned in the opening that a friend brought some Hill Farmstead cans, and I was excited that they just started doing this after, 5-6 years of being, as popular as they are. And their beers would really only travel in their hop forward beers would only travel in growlers, and they just started canning them, and they did 12-ounce cans, which really set them apart, or is potentially about to set them apart. And I'm just a huge fan of that because, I don't strive for any beer in a 16. I'm always I'd rather have 6-pack of cans of 12-ounce cans than 4 16 ounces. But
what was the price point on that? Do you know, on the 6-pack?
They're all. I mean, the one we drank tonight as a Pilsner was probably $13 or $14. I think the double IPAs are probably 15 or 16. Yeah,
for a 6-pack of 12-ounce cans.
Yeah,
which I mean equates to about that 4-pack 16-ounce cans price point too.
Sure, but not a comparable one. Like if we compared this to Treehouse, then the Treehouse one would be $20 for a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans. So then it's about even. Yeah.
But it's a Pilsner. What's Rev Pilsner cost you?
$10.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the 4-pack of 16-ounce cans is very pro supplier in my opinion because cans are the actual can it goes in is a fairly significant cost to the overall cost to the brewery, the supplier of the beer. And but the difference between a 12-ounce can and a 16-ounce can is very, very insignificant. So if you can
you're saying the cost of one beer, essentially, in a 4-pack versus a 6-pack, right?
I'm saying a 16-ounce can versus a 12-ounce can. The cost, the price of that can is very insignificant.
And I'm talking about the price of the liquid.
It's great great if you can sell 4 packs of 16-ounce cans. That's great
at
for
the same
brewery.
Price as you would for a 6-pack. Yeah.
I've always thought it was. I just think it's an interesting. It all depends on what your model is as a brewery. What are your long-term desires? Because like my mom will never buy a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans. She just wouldn't even look at them. But she will buy a 6-pack of 12-ounce cans all day at the Giant Eagle in Pittsburgh. Like she just wouldn't think there's just like a certain crowd of the not hardcore people that don't.
Does she buy beer for herself or for other people?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
She just acknowledges the inherent ridiculousness of a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans.
It sounds like Steve has something to say about that.
He's like sitting back, holding court essentially right now after he
in my lead back
broke
chair.
the chair.
Yeah.
So.
Guys, I think that's all we've got. I think it's time to take this conversation offline. I wanted to thank my guests, Steve Mastny, Doug Valicki, and Tom Corder for coming on. I want to thank all you guys for listening. I would very much appreciate any love that you guys can give us in terms of telling a friend or leaving a review or anything like that. But more importantly, I want to give all my guests who have come all the way down here to Bridgeport a moment to give a final word. And I will go in order of seniority. I'm going to go with the lounging Mr. Steve Mastny. He's got his shoes kicked off. Yep.
I briefly mentioned I had these 2 mugs, and I'm inordinately happy about this. There's a 1976 40th annual mug, and there's a 2017 81st annual. This is the Illinois Association of Highway Engineers. Next Friday, Thursday through Sunday, technically Saturday, there is a conference. So if you're into engineering, highway engineering, we still have a few open slots. If you don't come, it'll be okay. But I guarantee you there's going to be a great hospitality room. It's included in the cost of the conference. The Beer Temple is going to be supplying all the beers, so you know they're going to be great. And you'll get one of these sweet mugs. So, if you're into beer and engineering.
That is happening. No calls to action. Nope.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should come to Lyle, but you could come to Lyle and drink beer and learn about engineering with us.
How about you, Doug? Thank you, Steve.
I am bummed because not this coming weekend, next weekend, the weekend of the 29th and 30th of September, I cannot make it to Penrose's Celebration of Funk, which is a really cool event that they're putting on to, promote
Celebrate
the sour
funk.
wild ales and really cool lineup of breweries coming on. I can't make it because Revolution, we're having our Oktoberfest Street Festival, which is going to have a really cool eclectic lineup of bands that's going to be in the streets of Logan Square on Milwaukee Avenue between
Take
California
them to the streets this year. Yeah,
between California and Fullerton on Milwaukee. So both of those events are going on next week. So I was very conflicted.
So slick to make it like, I'm so sad that I can't because of this great event.
Well, the problem is he stole both of mine.
Yeah.
So he said mine. I was going to
If
say
you don't
his.
think yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
great. But now all you can do is talk about how great I am.
Drill it into their head.
Oh, I can't do that.
go for
I
it.
can't do that.
Talk about how you're sad that you can't go
I
to
am
Doug's
bummed.
event.
I am bummed
because,
I don't get to go hang out at the Rev Oktoberfest, dunking people in dunk tanks full of Oktoberfest beer and all that fun stuff.
I've dunked Vav in that tank before.
Exactly. It gets
And
really
Logan.
gross and Surratt and everything. It gets pretty gross in there. But super bummed about that. When they came out with that announcement, I was like, oh, it's the same weekend as ours. We have a festival going on in Geneva, Celebration of Funk. Currently, we have about 70 beers registered from 30 to 35 different breweries from around the country. It's going to be great. I'm going to have a great time. I'm in the last stages of planning and stressing out about all of that. So,
Fun.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Thanks so much, guys. We're over time. I want to thank all my guests and all my listeners and all my producers. Thank you, Serge. We will see you next week with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. So
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from